It is simply considered the networks of networks and the most powerful voice on natural environmental protection, created since 1948 and having a network of at least 1,400 members. It is a composition of the biggest names in environmentalism. And if you thought I'm talking about the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, you are absolutely correct. It is just one of the leading environmental campaigners present here in the Congolese capital, Brazzaville, for the second edition of the Summit of the Three Basins, which brought together leaders from the Amazon, from the Congo Basin, but equally from the Borno Mekong in Southeast Asia, which account for at least 80% of the world's natural forested areas. After the One Forest Summit in Gabon, it was a turn of President Denis Sassou Nguesso to make a clarion call of the critical nature of how it is essentially necessary for world leaders to act now on protecting the forests as one of the strategies to fight against climate change. What are the inputs from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature? My guest today is one of its key policy makers. Dr. Kenneth Angu, welcome to Globewatch after more than 7 years when you were first guest on this program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
My first question to you is that 12 years on, we are here in Brazzaville for the second edition of the Summit of the Three Basins. The first edition was equally held here in Brazzaville. Of what importance is a gathering like this for nature preservation actors like you?
Thank you very much. Yes, you're right. Actually, the first summit of the Three Basins was organized here in Brazzaville, but this time it wasn't in Brazzaville, here in Congo, but it wasn't in Brazzaville. It was in Fundu. Okay. So that was, it's very far off from here. So yes, it's very important. Summits like this are very important. You know, most of the time we have these three basins. You know, Southeast Asia, you have then the Amazon and the Congo Basin. But most of the time, people, the stakeholders, governments and stakeholders, they are more concentrated on their, actually on their own, for example, in their various discussions in their various basins, actually. So for us, I think it's very important because most of the time when they go out, for example, for international negotiations, it becomes a little bit difficult for them because they don't go with the same voice, actually. Whereas they have the same objective. It's the same objective, they have the tropical forest. You know, that is carbon stock. And with the carbon discussions now, you know, it's very important. But so they need to go as one. So it became very important. And so 12 years ago, they organized this summit here, and it was very important. That has been helping not only for international negotiations, but for the partners, the experts, you know, to exchange experiences and lessons learned so that, you know, they can better manage these remnants of tropical forest.
You are from the largest network of environmental protection and conservation in the world, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It is the largest of the networks in this domain in the world. When you are here, what authority do you add as a structure to a gathering like this? What kind of networking do you do?
Okay, the first thing, to answer the question, the first thing is, IUCN is an authority in protected area management. And when we talk of protected area, you know, when we talk of the tropical forests, most of them are in protected areas, actually. It's tropical forests, the biodiversity and the habitats, you know, all of them are in tropical, so in the protected area. So IUCN being an authority in protected area, for your information, IUCN, we organize every after 10 years, the World Congress on Protected Areas, so that stakeholders should discuss issues leading to sustainable management of protected areas. So here you see most of like our site events, in plenary, this discussion came up, and so it will be very important now to, to come out with strong recommendations needed for the protection of, for the sustainable management of protected areas, because with that, we are very sure that the forests of the three basins will be well protected together with the biodiversity that they harbor.
You have a membership of more than 1,400 members globally. Your expertise numbers are roughly 17,000 experts around the world. You were established in 1948, plus 70 years on. You spoke a while ago that you are an authority in endangered species, and you count roughly plus 41,000 of them worldwide. How serious is the situation of endangered species?
Yes, it's very serious because, when we talk of like bringing back ourselves here to this summit, forests are habitats of these species. And without the forest, it's just like you without your house. So that is why stakeholders are really, really bent on protecting this forest. Let me call it the remnant forest, because the rate of degradation, it's not.
It's quite high.
It's quite high. So, so that's why we came out with this the red list of endangered species. Actually, the objective here is to to give credible scientific information to decision makers in government, the conservation world, to understand the status of these species and to make sure that they are preserved. You see. So now, but it's not just let's not just look at it as something bad, because we also have what we call the green list. Green list now is to celebrate the efforts that the countries are doing, in terms of protecting these species, especially those that are found in protected areas.
Okay. You have a staff membership of about 900 people. You are operating in at least 160 countries around the world. But let us just hang on the issue of the forest in particular. Earlier this year, there was the One Planet Summit in Libreville, Gabon, where the future of our world was discussed. You notice that in the policy document produced by President Denis Sassou Nguesso, he says that roughly 350 million of hectares of forest are in a difficult position around the world and needs an investment of roughly $1 trillion in protecting them, maintain their natural environment. At the level of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, what are you people doing particularly for forest preservation, for the natural habitats of the monkeys, the chimpanzees, the pangolins, and others that you are protecting?
Thanks a lot. Yes, I was also present in the Forest Summit in Libreville, and our role there was also to make sure, to support the effort as an international union, because when we talk of international union, actually, as you just mentioned, it's IUCN. The members are government. State members, you have international organizations, then you have civil society organizations.
Yeah,
so
sure.
yes, so for us to conserve, we work especially through supporting the government to either implement or reform forest policies, especially to reform. Actually, there are, for example, those policies that are archaic. And the another aspect also is to elaborate new policies. For example, when you take just the case of Cameroon, the forestry law was, that was the forestry law of 1994. So by that time, we didn't have this international discourse about climate change. So most of the time now, that's why, you know, we're working also to make sure that some of these emerging themes, you know, are being captured in national policies and legislation, for example. That's concerning policy. The other aspect, we also work to support this government, for example, to the African government, the government of the three basins, because we're based in the three basins. So we support them also to manage landscapes and protected areas, actually. That is it. So then secondly, as I just mentioned, they always participate in the international, the IUCN Protected Area Congress. Then of recent also, last year we organized the African Protected Area Conference, which the countries participated, including Cameroon at the highest level. So,
a moment ago you mentioned climate change, which is impacting our nature very well and negatively. In most cases, you have floods, you have landslides, you have climatic changes, which are quite unpredictable all this time. IUCN, where do you come in when it comes to the fight against climate change?
Yes, actually, we are very present, actually, especially when it concerns climate change mitigation and adaptation. You know, when we talk of like mitigation, it's more often, you know, for our viewers out there to understand, you know, in a very easy ways, you know, the forest and biodiversity, you know, the stock, you know, carbon, you know, called a carbon sequestration. You know, so the capture, for example, CO2 in the atmosphere as the green. So once you clear off these trees through deforestation and everything, it releases the CO2 into the atmosphere, and that contributes to global warming. And for your information, just look for the Congo Basin, for example. Just the trees, they sequester about like 19. They sequester close to like 19%, you know, of the world's CO2. So you can imagine if there is deforestation, that will become very difficult. So that is it. Then we also work through adaptation, because when we talk about this mitigation, meaning that, for example, we support countries, also discuss with them both at the national and regional level to prepare them for the various, they call it the COP, which is the Conference of the Parties for Climate Change. So because each year we have this negotiation, so most countries, they go to negotiate.
And talking about the COPs, of course, which is basically the work of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change established by the United Nations. The next United Nations Framework Conference on Climate Change will be taking place in the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai in particular. How is your organization preparing to attend that summit, which is marked by controversy, because this is largely a petro-managed economy, hosting it for the very first time?
Yeah, actually, as usual, the delegation will be led by our headquarters. That shows how important it is. Okay. Yeah, of course, with those from the regional offices also, regional and national offices. So actually, we first we support the any country negotiators in the various countries. For example, then also within COMIFAC, for example,
the Central Africa Forest Commission.
Yes, the Central African Forest Commission. You know, we work also with them to to make sure that the Central African countries, they go, they participate with one single voice.
Which are basically members of the Congo Basin.
Yes, of course. Yeah, they are members of the Congo Basin. So that's what we do. Basically, that's what we do to make sure that we support these countries concerning their participation in the COP.
In a moment, the interview will be coming to an end. But first, you have been involved for so many years in environmental protection, in the preservation of the natural environment, on climate issues. When you look at the policy documents that have been produced over the years, what do you think are the major threats to forest preservation, like you said, and what particularly do you identify as solutions?
Yes, actually, yeah, the threats actually, yeah. The first is agriculture. Okay. Yes, agriculture, because you know, agriculture, that's, let me put it, the unsustainable agriculture, because not all agriculture is detrimental to climate change, because we need to eat.
Well, green farming is increasingly becoming part of our agricultural framework today, and it's climate friendly.
Exactly, and so we're now moving, especially now, to intensive farming.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so those are the stuff. You know, you have issues also like bushfire. Bushfire, then you have mining, unsustainable mining. Actually, that's also another serious cause. But then those that most of us we know, it's unsustainable logging. So those are the key issues. There are a lot of them actually, but those are the key issues. Then solution actually, as I just mentioned, concerning agriculture, we need to make sure that we're supporting countries to come out with what we call smart agriculture. You know, I just mentioned, for example, one of them should be like intensive farming. You know, there are some studies that also helps not only the scientific community, but also those on the field to make sure that they do sustainable agriculture. Then concerning mining, yeah, most often we discuss with the stakeholders to make sure that the mining is also sustainable, and also those that are in protected area. Most often, mining is preferable out of the protected areas actually. Okay. So that is some of the solutions that we have among us. Yeah.
One but last question. You are the country director of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature in Cameroon, amongst other portfolios. How do you work in Cameroon? How palpable is your work in Cameroon?
Thanks. Actually, you know, Cameroon have various ecological regions, and we support the Cameroonian government also in these various regions. And let me use this opportunity to thank the Minister of the Environment, you know, the Minister of Environment, and also the Minister of Forestry and Wildlife, because they are really, you know, for their support also in the actions of IUCN. So most often, yeah, we support the government and the government to sustainably manage protected areas. Actually, for example, in the north, you know, in areas such as Benue, Ouazalogon, you come towards in the Congo Basin. That's the tropical forest area. That's around the TNS. You know, that's the border between Cameroon, Central African Republic, and of course Congo. Yeah, then there is Tridom also. So yeah, so then there's also some areas in the southwest and northwest region. So, but anyway, in a nutshell, then there is this cross-cutting issues like policy, dialogue, you know, making sure that there is also livelihood activities, because when we talk of conservation, we really prefer using the word sustainable management of natural resources, because within that you have issues related to, for example, reconciling conservation and national and local development. That is something which is also very important for us.
Finally, what is your policy outline as the International Union for the Conservation of the Nature for the next maybe 2 to 3 years? In which areas are you focusing? Conservation, restoration, or adaptation?
They are interrelated.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we work on, for example, sustainable forest management. And, you know, like when you look in Cameroon, for example, when you talk about sustainable management, we're talking about the tropical areas in Cameroon, actually. Yeah, when talking about, for example, southeast Cameroon. Then when we talk of restoration, you know, we're thinking more on the north of Cameroon, where you don't have this tropical forest. Yeah, then climate change, of course. Yeah, we will continue to work to, you know, to fight climate change. Then another issue also is livelihood, making sure that we reconcile conservation and national development. Then there is also the policy dialogue. And of course, I will not forget to mention protected area management and biodiversity conservation. That's something very important.
And with that, we conclude the interview. Dr. Kenneth Angu from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Thank you very much indeed for talking to Globewatch, and it was nice seeing you after about 8 years.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You are the boss of a media empire. When you hear the word fake news, what does it ring to your ears?
Major issue, major problem, probably biggest problem of our times, because it's spreading worldwide. It's very difficult to counteract for many reasons. The first being that it is generally accepted that the budget for spreading fake news is 100 times bigger than the budget for fighting them. So we know the end result already. Second problem is that very often what is spread as content by fake news is very welcome by those who sees them or hears them. Just because, you know, it kind of touches something in people that makes them want to believe them. Because too many people think that politicians and the official word, and unfortunately often the media too, doesn't say the whole truth. And so they think that what they hear is actually telling them the quote-unquote real truth, which it isn't.
Okay.
Because it's used by government or by different people or by corporations also, just to push their advantage or to make a point or to destabilize states or countries or media or corporations.
You have a huge experience in the media world. What difference do you make between fake news and misinformation and hate speech on the media?
Well, it's a very tiny one. Misinformation can be the result of bad reporting or bad understanding of the situation or deliberate wish to misinformate. Whereas fake news, we know for sure, if it's proven to be fake news, it's deliberately saying something which isn't true. So that's the difference, but it really is a tiny point. And both, whether they're willingly or they're by accident, both are very wrong and very bad for our communities.
Most of the fake news and misinformation and hate speech that we see in our society today is mostly driven by social media. You heard a traditional media organ, TV5 Monde. How can we fight hate speech, fake news, and misinformation?
It is very difficult to fight those because, well, firstly, they are much more funded than we are. And also, I'm going to give you an example. First news that you hear is Charles has a relationship with a goat. Second news is the goat says it's not true. Third news is what everybody keeps in mind. Charles had a relationship with a goat. And that's very unfortunate. But that's how it works. So it's very, very difficult to fight all misinformation. What we can do, and it's not sufficient, is to always be reliable and try and make sure that people finally come to understand that, and especially public service media, is always reliable. I think during the pandemic, where a lot of fake news were broadcasted everywhere and passed around, and still public service radio and television were very, very useful for population. I mean, at TV5 Monde, for example, we were contacted by OMS and the United Nations, and to, especially here in Africa, to broadcast messages explaining that it was a real threat, it was a real disease, and how to try and not erase it, but fight against it. So that's the only thing that we can do, because obviously we all have, and we have that at TV5 Monde, programs that are fighting fake news, special programs that say, fake or truth. But if people don't watch us, they're not going to see that anyway, and that's the problem of social media. So we try to invest, obviously, social media as much as we can to try and fight that. But it's still, the problem is, the people want to hear what is outrageous sometimes more than the truth, because very often, the truth is just something plain and simple. So it doesn't have the same attraction than something that is absolutely outrageous.